Hey everyone, Cynics here, and it's time for another design theory video. Today we're going to discuss design economy, but if you stick around, maybe I'll ramble afterwards about actual economics. So, what is design economy and how can you make the line go up on your designs? Well, for the purposes of this video, we're going to use the word economy to refer to how we ration out excitement in a design so that we can spend it where we want and not just make everything chaotic. In previous videos, I talked about how compositions are built around managing your focal interests so that the viewer's eyes are guided clearly and confidently. This is very similar in theory, like all things in art, but we're going to use the word economy to talk about the overall shape breakdown and silhouette of a design. That means this video will also be a spiritual sequel to the videos about big, medium, small, and shape appeal, as these concepts are all intertwined and relatively the same in theory. Once again, I will reiterate that all creative things revolve around a basic aesthetic theory. Organization is clarity, clarity is confidence, confidence is trust, trust is comfort, and comfort is appeal. It doesn't really matter how you phrase it, but hopefully you get the general idea behind aesthetics as requiring a mutual subconscious trust between artist and viewer. You're probably aware of how functionality can lead to good design. I would say that's partly because functionality can be an important factor in establishing trust. But if you want to have a bit more fun with your designs, you can also seek out feelings of trust elsewhere in order to give yourself extra wiggle room for creativity. That's honestly the jumping off point for a different aspect of design theory, the subject that I refer to as anchor points, but I'll keep myself focused on the topic at hand. Regardless, for theories, it's always best to break things down to their core ideas. So, getting back to economics, our goal on most designs is to save as much information as we can, to be as thrifty as possible with the way we show ideas so that we can spend excitement where we want it. Hopefully, the shape appeal video gave you insight into how to make very economically efficient shapes. Shapes that are clear in intent without wasting any extra attention on themselves. But designs consist of lots of shapes, and aside from giving them size hierarchy, aka big, medium, small, as well as composition, aka a controlled focus for your eyes, what else do we want to keep in mind with these shapes? Well, that would be the economy of complexity. Let's ask ourselves, what is the lowest economy shape we can make? Just the simplest thing possible. Maybe a circle? We can stretch the circle, make it more organic, and still leave it at a nearly flat economy. However, if I start to pinch it in or create angles, that certainly starts spending some of our savings. Once we start really adding disjointed forms and complexity, that is when the spending gets out of hand and the economy goes off the chart. Having said that, if we do nothing but save and spend no economy, then we're also going to get a fairly boring result, which can be okay for things that we don't want to be interesting, maybe background characters and other nonsense. That is not the goal, however. The goal is to know how to save and be cheap so that you can actually spend those savings in the places you want and make exciting designs that don't overwhelm the viewer with a sense of confusion and chaos. So it's good to at least practice how to make things with a very low economy. This is where we can use the concept of flow, which was discussed more in the shape appeal video, but flow is a term that I define as the losing of individuality in shapes in order to form a larger totality. The example I used previously consisted of a leg standing on its toes. These quick drawings don't represent a crazy high economy or anything, but it is a place where using flow to cut corners can save us some money, giving us more to spend in the other parts of the drawing. So we use flow to combine many shapes into less shapes, and now we have an economically efficient version of the drawing. But once again, that's not where the concept ends. It does remind me of something though. Let's actually take a moment to exhume the corpse of Concord, a big budget game that was largely panned for its designs. It was quite common after the game released to see people trying to fix them. Some people referenced pretty constructive ideas, such as the horrible lack of value hierarchy, as well as color hierarchy, where neither one was helping to guide the eye in any meaningful way, and any feeling of focus just kind of washed over the designs. Some people's corrections just consisted of making it look more like a separate thing they liked, which is kind of a neutral step. But the one thing I would consider the most important critique was the awful use of silhouette economy. The designs are so stingy with the silhouettes. I would definitely be willing to get this art team to manage my finances because they're pinching every penny out of these designs. The very few times I have seen the design spend economy, it seems to be in the strangest ways. We're really in the design soup line here, boiling our shoes for sustenance while sitting on a mountain of cash that we're afraid to spend. The masses are begging, please, sir, give us just a taste of peaks and valleys, maybe just an ounce of freedom from the shackles of our core silhouettes. Of course, in any work we do, we can spend our design economy on some big peaks and valleys, some disconnecting shapes, and maybe even some acute angles here and there. If you've been saving up your design bucks, these can feel great to throw on a design. Obviously, within reason, a ridiculous peak or valley can look jarring on an otherwise super skimpy design, but there's also a lot of factors like implied negative shapes and line interactions that really just come down to feel. You can think about something like deer antlers, which seem to be absolutely wild for balancing design economics, but because of the organic flows of movement, they can still look quite beautiful in reality. As an art teacher, I see tons of art from all skill levels all year long. I can tell you that one of the biggest things that hold back most artists is their ability to manage their design economies. It's usually the big spenders, not holding back anything, making everything needlessly complex, racking up credit card debt on every design they put down. But sometimes you do get people that are way too conservative with their design spending as well. It takes a while to develop the right awareness for this stuff, and that's okay. So, what is the right awareness? How do you know how much to complicate or simplify a design? Well, I can give you a generic answer like 80% simple and 20% complex, but there's no exact rule. As long as you're within the margins of reasonable taste, you're free to be either high economy or low economy, but it must be done with full intent, awareness, and confidence. Just make sure your points of excitement are budgeted for elsewhere in the design. As with all things in art, the best way to get better is through observation. So, at the very least, try to develop the skills to look at a design and actively think about the economics of the silhouette it's giving you. Here's a quick analysis of what I would be noticing in my little avocado samurai. You might notice my balances tend to be on the cheaper side. Regardless, you can even practice with the intent of adaptation and analysis. Let's try drawing the silhouette of a bush or any shrubbery. You can make it have zero economy, where you're not even giving the viewer contextual information of what they're looking at, or you can make it have an extreme economy, where you're beating the viewer over the head with your lack of confidence that they will understand what they're looking at. But you can also just figure out what feels right to you. As a fan of cheap economies, I like finding the bare minimum of what gives the knowledge to the viewer in the least amount of information. You might enjoy spending a bit more, but as long as there is confidence in the intent, the viewer will feel that in your lines and trust you, creating that thing we call good aesthetics. Alright, quick summation. Things that lower the economy in a silhouette are simple forms with no silhouette movement. Things that spend up the economy are sharp angles, shapes that counter the flow of the silhouette, detached shapes, pinch points, and so on. Your goal as a designer is to find the balance of saving as much as you can so that the places you spend it feel earned. I know it might seem like I'm constantly just throwing new terms at you over the years, but I am a believer that words help shape observations. So make them specific and use them to critique the world around you. This will make your brain better at design. Okay, I think that is it for this topic. I could also talk about how this exact theory applies to painting and color, where the savings come from things like shifting hue in order to create the feeling of value changes while saving on the amount of overall value movement so that you can then spend it more selectively. But that's probably something for an advanced painting video. So we're just going to wrap this up for now. Thank you to everyone that took the time to watch this video, and a big thank you to all of the Patreon supporters as well. Parenting is certainly a full-time job, so also much love and respect to all of the other parents out there. Take care, everyone.